The forest was quiet, as if holding its breath. Sunlight filtered through the dense canopy, casting golden patches on the ground. Andrew walked along the path, breathing in the fresh air filled with the scent of pine and moss. Beside him trotted Bars, his loyal dog, his reddish fur gleaming in the sun. They often walked here, and each time the forest offered them something new, the chirping of birds, the murmur of a stream, or the soothing silence that calmed the soul. But today, something felt off. Bars suddenly stopped, alert. His ears perked up, and his tail froze. Andrew felt a chill run down his spine. "What is it, Bars?" he whispered, but the dog was already barking, sharp and loud. The bark was a warning, a cry for help. Andrew looked around, but there was nothing to see. Only trees, thick and tall, like sentinels guarding their domain. And then, shadows emerged from behind the trees. First one, then two, three, wolves. They moved slowly, as if they knew they had all the time in the world. Their eyes glinted with a cold light, and their teeth bared in silent snarls. Andrew's heart began to pound. He glanced back, but the path they had come from was already blocked. The wolves were closing in. Bars stood in front of his owner, growling and baring his teeth. He was ready to defend Andrew to the end, but there were too many wolves. Andrew realized they were trapped. His hands trembled, and his mind raced. What do I do? How do we get out? He knew he couldn't fight them alone, but Bars didn't seem willing to give up. The first wolf lunged at the dog. Bars met it with a snarl, sinking his teeth into his opponent. Andrew heard the tearing of fur, the ragged breaths of the animals. He wanted to help, but other wolves were already circling, ready to attack. Bars fought desperately, fending them off, but the odds were against him. Andrew knew they had to run. It was their only chance. "Bars, hold on," he shouted, but the dog was already surrounded. Andrew turned and ran, his legs buckling under the weight of fear. Behind him, he heard barking, sometimes fierce, sometimes pleading. His heart was breaking. He knew he was leaving his friend behind, but the fear for his own life was stronger. The forest around him felt alien, hostile. The trees, once friendly, now seemed like a trap. Andrew ran until he stumbled into a clearing. He collapsed to the ground, his heart pounding as if it might burst. One question echoed in his mind. What happened to Bars? He knew the dog had likely died protecting him. The thought was unbearable. Andrew buried his face in his hands, feeling tears stream down his cheeks. He would never forgive himself. Never. The house wasn't far. Andrew made it there, barely able to stand. He stepped inside, sat on the floor, and stared into emptiness. Over and over, he replayed the fight in his mind. Bars barking, the wolves' growls, the fear that had paralyzed him. He felt like a traitor. How could he have left his friend? Hours passed. Andrew sat in the dark, unable to move. Suddenly, he heard a rustling at the door. His heart stopped. He looked up and saw the door slowly creak open. There stood Bars. His fur was matted with blood, one leg dragging behind him, but he was alive. The dog looked at Andrew with tired eyes, as if to say, "I'm back." Andrew rushed to Bars, hugging him tightly as tears welled up again. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," he whispered, examining the wounds. Bars weakly wagged his tail, as if to say it was okay. Andrew immediately began tending to him, cleaning the wounds carefully, trying not to cause more pain. He kept talking to the dog, soothing him. When he was done, Andrew sat beside Bars, gently stroking his head. He realized their bond was much deeper than that of a man and his pet. Bars wasn't just a dog. He was a friend who had been willing to give his life for him. Andrew felt a warmth spread through his chest. He was grateful to fate for bringing Bars back. Weeks passed. Bars recovered, though his leg never fully healed. He couldn't run as fast as before, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that he was alive. Every day, Andrew thanked him, patted him, and told him how much he loved him. They walked in the forest again, but now Andrew was always on guard. He knew the forest could be beautiful, but also dangerous. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Andrew watched Bars sleeping peacefully at his feet. He thought about how much the dog meant to him. Bars had taught him to value life, to fight for those he loved, and to never give up. Andrew smiled. He knew their friendship had been tested in the worst way, and they had come out stronger. Outside, the forest was quiet again, as if holding its breath. But now Andrew knew that even in the deepest silence, danger could lurk. And he was ready for it. After all, he had Bars, his loyal friend, who would always be by his side.